Welcome to Hamingja. In this episode, we'll explore the symbolism and importance of the ring among Indo-European pagan peoples, how it became the vessel of oath and obligation. This is the background and context to the ritual guide for oath swearing and consecration rituals. These rituals will be found on the Hamingja pagan streaming service, among hundreds of other rituals, and also courses, masterclasses, documentaries, etc. So sign up for our newsletter on hamingja.foundation/membership. Throughout the ancient Indo-European world, the act of swearing an oath was imbued with profound spiritual and social significance. The practice reflected their deep veneration for truth and belief in the sacrality of spoken words. Our ancestors treated certain objects as more than mere tools or ornaments. Here we're going to take a closer look at the origins, significance and rituals surrounding the consecration of oath rings, how they served as keystones in fostering trust, forging alliances, and upholding the spiritual and social fabric of early Indo-European societies. Among Indo-European peoples, the ring was never a mere ornament. From the Bronze Age, rings carried meanings of status, binding, and the sacred, uniting personal adornment with cosmic symbolism and embodying sacred and social meaning. The most fundamental aspect of the ring, the symbol per se, as in rings, bracelets, arm rings, belts, torques, etc., is obviously its circularity. To Indo-European thought, the circle represents eternity, wholeness, and the unbreakable bond. The unbroken circle is a natural emblem of permanence, eternal cosmic order, the cycle of life, death, and renewal, the continuity of time, unity, etc., making it indispensable in ritual, legal, and social contexts, etc. One of the earliest examples of this is the Proto-Indo-European youth warrior initiates called choreos, a cultural phenomenon that gave rise to the later Vedic vratyas, meaning dog priests, the ancient Greek ephebes and choros, the Spartan krypteia, the Roman luperci or luperci, stemming from the word wolf, and the Germanic einherjar, ulfhedna, männerbund, and even the Vikings, in fact. These war bands fought naked or semi-naked. This is what they originally did. They wore only a belt and their weapons. The belt was obviously a way of carrying their tools and weapons, everything they owned, in fact. But it also symbolized their bond and loyalty to both the leader, the band, and the divine. This belt, which was put on during an outcast ritual, seems to be the very origin of later oath rings, etc. Something that encircles and a symbol of fidelity, honor, and the divine oversight of agreements. This sacrality is also clearly evident in younger pagan branches, where we see that ring bestowal held a central role in maintaining functional relationships between rulers, their retinues, and the divine kindreds. The circle or ring symbolizes eternal law and permanent vow and bond, and it was used in a lot of contexts: agreements, pledges of loyalty, legal proceedings, diplomatic treaties, rituals, ceremonies, rites of passage, etc. This incredibly important symbolism and significance of the ring is clearly visible throughout the Indo-European world. In the Vedic initiation rite Upanayana, the investiture of the so-called Dviya thread marks the acceptance of a student by a preceptor, that's to say a guru or a acharya, and the lifelong bond between them. In ancient Greece, we see many a myth, including rings, like those about Gyges ring or Gyges ring, or however you pronounce that, symbolizing the power of oath-breaking versus moral obligation. And the ring of Polycrates, where the ring is a token of his inescapable fate. In Greece and Rome, the annulus signatorius oath refers to the use of a signet ring to seal a document's authenticity and guaranteeing sworn testimony. In all the branches, we also see gift-giving of rings by kings to, for example, poets and priests, symbolizing not only generosity, but the binding of patronage in a sacred frame. Among the Germanic peoples, we see rings everywhere, as symbols of kingship and authority, as seen in the mythic ring-giver archetype, where leaders were responsible for distributing wealth and honor to their followers, solidifying bonds of loyalty and reflecting the ring's function as a token of oaths and sacred promises. Odin's multiplying ring, Draupnir, shows us the highly Indo-European theme of the gift-giving cycle. Odin's connection to sacrifice and that wealth is temporary while honor and fate endure. In the famous Norse legend of Andvaranaut, the dwarf Andvari's ring is so important that Loki steals it, and in revenge, Andvari curses it to bring misfortune and destruction to whoever possesses it. A story showing us that rings always come with something eternal, in this case a curse, and that highlights the deep connection between rings and inescapable fate in Germanic lore. Is this starting to sound familiar? Let's have a look at J.R.R. Tolkien's world in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. His use of ring symbolism in the eposes is definitely no coincidence. It is deeply rooted in his academic background and fascination with Indo-European and Germanic culture, mythology, and spirituality. As a scholar of Old English and Norse literature, Tolkien drew heavily on the symbolic power of rings in Germanic traditions, weaving their significance into his epic narratives in ways that reflect the spiritual and cultural importance they held for our ancestors. In fact, the very names Baggins and Bag End stem from the ancient Indo-European word for ring. And here we can compare the Proto-Indo-European word or root Baug or Baug. We see Proto-Germanic Baugas, Old Norse Bauger or Bauger, Old English Baig or Bay. The same root gives modern words like bend and bow, both as a verb and a noun. And even bagel, actually. It's obviously ring-shaped. Quite fun, actually. In Norse, Anglo-Saxon, and other Germanic sources, we see words like big weenie, meaning ring of friends. That's to say that you're of the same tribe or kin. We see begabryta and begiva, both meaning ring giver, as in chieftain or king, granting the people food and wealth and protection. Tolkien was of course aware of all of this. His works resonate deeply with these themes of power, fate and bondage, just like the myths and sagas. His portrayal of the 20 rings of power is a profound reflection of the symbolic weight rings carried in Germanic culture and Indo-European at a large. So how do we connect rings, belts, bracelets, etc. to oaths? Why did they become so closely associated with oaths, vows, and agreements? Several reasons and explanations have already been suggested. Jewelry as wealth and payment, the inherent eternal symbolism of the circle, and so on. But let's dig even deeper. We can trace the modern English word oath. We see that in modern Scandinavian languages we say ed, and in modern German eid. And we can trace them via, for example, Proto-Germanic eidas, Old Norse eidr, Old High German eid, and Gothic eides, Old English arth, and Proto-Celtic oitos, Old Irish oath, Proto-Italic oitor, Ancient Greek oitos, etc. There's so many examples. It all goes all the way back to the Proto-Indo-European noun hoitos, obviously meaning oath, vow, or binding promise. But also judicial swearing, solemn appeal to deity in witness of truth or a promise. And it can also mean an invocation of divinity. So this noun has its origin in the Proto-Indo-European root hei. So hoitos stems from hei, meaning to go, to step, or to set in motion, or even the march. Might be weird, but in this sense, the earliest idea of an oath was not merely a spoken declaration, but literally a going, an action, a step, or a ritual passage, meaning that there was an ancient practice of actually walking or moving as a part of the ceremony when swearing and taking on an oath. And not only walking per se, but in fact walking around and between parts of the slaughtered sacrificial animal while uttering the words. So in the oldest Indo-European tradition, it wasn't enough to just saying that you swear to do something. For one's words and oath to be valid and have considerable weight, one had to have the gods present by invoking them, sacrificing to them, and then circle around and between the parts of the sacrifice while speaking. The circling the sacrifice must have functioned as a sympathetic magic to infuse extra power into one's vow. And with the gods present and listening, one must have truly realized the seriousness of what one had said and promised. We see examples of this oath-swearing procedure among the Hittites, the Vedics, and other Indo-Iranian peoples. We see it in Greece, in Homer, for example. We see it in Rome, in Livy's works, and even in Lithuania as late as in the 14th century. In all cases, it seems to be important to proclaim that so may it befall me, being cut in half, that is, if I don't keep my promise. The logic was simple but powerful. May the gods do to me as was done to this animal if I break my word. The act of walking around and between the slain parts physically embodied the oath, making the swearer as someone set apart, either protected by divine sanction or doomed if perjured. This modus operandi might also explain later traditions like the Norse or Germanic, where oaths were sworn on rings reddened with sacrificial blood. So I see a red thread here, no pun intended. On this platform, you'll also find a guide to an oath-swearing ritual. But first, we shall take a look at how to consecrate our oath ring, to activate it and dedicate it to this sole purpose. Words like consecrate, sacred, and sacrifice, they all stem from an Indo-European root, sek, meaning to cut off, set apart, or separate. Our ancestors made a distinction between what is sacred, that's to say, what's been cut off or dedicated, and holy, meaning where the divine is, the center, the holy center, where the divine or spiritual enters the material, the physical world. Compare, for example, with that at the mythological creation of Rome. Romulus, he plows a furrow to mark out the boundaries and then performs a sacrifice. And he then strikes his brother dead for trying to enter the sacred space the wrong way and without being permitted nor worthy. So something consecrated is something that's been dedicated to one sole purpose. It's been formally transferred from the profane sphere, and here profane actually itself means outside the sacred, profanum, to the divine sphere and set apart for the divine. So to consecrate is not just to bless or honor, but to change an object's status so it belongs to the divine. Consecration therefore bound the object, in this case a ring or a bracelet, to the divine, the humans in turn to the cosmic truth of their promises, a bond as enduring and as perilous to break as the unbroken circle of the ring itself. So, when it comes to the practical meaning in consecration ritual, across Indo-European traditions, consecrating something was most often a formal act with three main functions. 1. Purification. That's to say, removing worldly impurity. And here it's important to remember that impurity does not mean anything like sin in our Indo-European tradition, but rather something that's in the wrong place at the wrong time, something that doesn't belong there at the moment. So it's not anything about sin or anything like that. 2. Invocation. Calling on divine witnesses and claimants. 3. Transfer of ownership, physically and symbolically giving it to the divine kindreds and perhaps also moving it somewhere else. Once consecrated, the object is no longer in the human domain. It may still be handled, but only in ritual contexts, and usually only by those permitted by tradition and after purification. Its power is thought to derive from its divine association, making it dangerous or unlucky to use improperly. Now that we have this context and understanding, let's move on to the oathing consecration ritual itself. Although methods varied from Indo-European branch to branch, you'll notice several deep structural patterns. Now, for the consecration ritual and oath swearing ritual, you'll find them on hamingja.foundation/membership. If you want to learn and start practicing the ways of your ancestors, swear an oath that you'll go there and sign up for the newsletter.